Welcome to Everyday Better You, a space where we don't chase overnight miracles or empty promises of instant transformation. Instead, we gather here to peel back the layers of reality and look deeply into the mechanics of who we are. Today, we begin a journey that might feel uncomfortable, yet it is absolutely essential. A transparent look at how your brain has been re-engineered by dopamine. We aren't here to judge or to criticize, but to wake up, not to blame ourselves, but to reclaim our power of control. If you have ever found yourself drowning in a sea of distractions, addicted to your screen, struggling with patience, or feeling a constant nagging sense of boredom that only a little more stimulation can fix, then this is for you. In the spirit of becoming 1% better every day, simply understanding this mechanism means you have already begun the process of change. You are not lazier than previous generations, you aren't weaker than your parents, and you certainly aren't as useless as your dark thoughts sometimes whisper. The truth is actually far more systematic. Your brain has been trained to demand more dopamine than nature ever intended. Every notification, every infinite scroll, and every 10-second video is a whisper to your biology, telling you to stay just a little bit longer. What started as entertainment has morphed into a habit, until eventually, the sound of nothingness becomes unbearable. We reach for our phones before our eyes are even fully open, we struggle to finish a single page of a book, and we crave massive success while being unable to tolerate the slow, necessary process of growth. This isn't a moral failure, it is a sophisticated biological invasion. If we don't understand the battlefield, we will keep fighting the wrong enemy. This journey doesn't promise to be easy, but it promises the truth. And the truth, no matter how much it stings, is always the starting point of true freedom. Section 1, the truth about dopamine, wanting versus BAS. Liking to truly embark on the journey of becoming 1% better every day, we are forced to clear away the wreckage of biological misunderstandings, and at the top of that list is the myth of dopamine. For decades, dopamine has been misunderstood as the pleasure hormone, a kind of reward that the brain grants us when we achieve something significant. However, the truth, as renowned neuroscientist Andrew Huberman has frequently emphasized, is that dopamine does not create joy, it creates the intense urge to pursue it. It is not the feeling of satisfaction you get after finishing a delicious meal. Rather, it is the electric current running down your spine that forces you to stand up, open the refrigerator, and search desperately for that food. In more precise scientific terms, dopamine is a signal of wanting, not liking. This distinction is the deadly trap of our modern digital era. When you pick up your phone and begin scrolling through short videos that last only a few seconds, your brain is not becoming any happier. It is simply becoming hungrier. Every swipe, every refresh of the feed is another drop of fuel for that hunger, causing your behavioral orientation system to get stuck in an infinite loop. Keep scrolling, keep searching, but never finding enough. This is not an evolutionary mistake, but an ancient survival mechanism placed in the wrong context. In the natural environment of tens of thousands of years ago, dopamine was the engine that helped our ancestors survive by urging them to hunt, explore new lands, and build communities. However, in a modern world saturated with cheap, instant stimulation, this mechanism is being exploited to the point of total exhaustion. When your baseline dopamine level is constantly pushed to extreme highs by non-stop notifications from social media or mindless entertainment, the brain performs a natural defensive maneuver. It reduces the sensitivity of dopamine receptors to protect the nervous system from overload. The result? The simple, healthy joys of life, such as reading a profound book, having a deep conversation, or focusing on a difficult project, suddenly feel gray, dull, and unappealing. Have you ever wondered why you feel a total lack of motivation despite your deep desire for success? The reality is that your motivation has not disappeared. It has been eroded by a surplus of stimulation. We can look at the examples of high achievers like Elon Musk to see the difference in how they manage their dopamine systems. Before becoming a global icon, Musk endured working over 100 hours a week, sleeping on factory floors, and facing immense mental pressure. What allowed him to overcome those challenges was not dopamine from instant gratification, but the hard-earned ability to delay rewards. As he once shared, if he had sought comfort and ease early on, a company like SpaceX would never have existed. The biggest lesson here is not that we must work in an extreme or unhealthy manner, but rather to understand that the human brain requires gaps and long-term challenges for dopamine to serve its proper role as a guide. When we abuse dopamine, the brain begins a dangerous biological restructuring process. As dopamine receptors decrease, you find yourself needing stronger, faster, and more frequent stimulation just to feel normal. It becomes an inescapable downward spiral. The more you stimulate, the more numb you become. And the more numb you become, the more you crave. You are no longer truly enjoying life. You are merely trying to soothe a screaming dopamine deficit inside you. This truth may be painful to hear, but is also the starting point of true freedom. Understanding dopamine correctly is the first step toward reclaiming control over your life. You do not need to cut off every joy, but you must restore the natural sensitivity of your brain by accepting slowness, embracing difficult challenges, and even tolerating the feeling of boredom. It is precisely in those quiet moments, away from external stimulation, that your brain has the opportunity to heal and reprogram its reward system. When you learn to sit still without needing an immediate hit of dopamine, the chemical returns to its rightful role as a loyal ally, guiding you to persist through long-term meaningful goals. This is the only solid foundation for becoming 1% better every day in a sustainable way. We must recognize that we are living through a biological invasion. If we continue to fight against our own nature without understanding the rules of the game, we are destined to lose our focus and our sense of purpose. Slowness is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of power. By choosing the difficult path, by choosing to engage in deep work rather than shallow distractions, we are essentially resensitizing our souls to the beauty of the world. The journey toward a better self isn't found in the next notification, but in the silence between them. Section 2. Biological invasion and receptor numbness. To move forward on our path of becoming 1% better every day, we must look directly at the physical reality of our brains. We often talk about bad habits as if they were merely choices or lapses in willpower, but the truth is far more clinical and, in a way, more frightening. What we are experiencing in the digital age is a sophisticated biological invasion that physically restructures the neural pathways of our minds. Your brain is not a static object. It is a highly plastic organ that adapts to the environment you place it in. When that environment consists of a non-stop stream of high-intensity, low-effort dopamine triggers, your biology has no choice but to adapt in a way that eventually robs you of your peace. The most critical part of this adaptation involves your dopamine receptors. Think of these receptors as tiny ears on your neurons waiting to hear the music of dopamine. Under normal, natural conditions, the music is soft and intermittent. You find a bit of food, you complete a task, you have a good laugh with a friend. These are gentle melodies that your brain can easily process. But today, we are blasting those ears with heavy metal at maximum volume, 24 hours a day. Every vibrantly colored ad and every auto-playing video is a deafening blast of dopamine. To protect itself from this sensory assault, the brain does something instinctive. It turns down the volume. It reduces the number of active receptors, effectively making itself deaf to dopamine. This state is what we call receptor numbness or downregulation. It is the biological root of why, after a long day of relaxing on social media, you feel more exhausted and hollow than when you started. You have pushed your system so hard that the things that used to bring you genuine satisfaction no longer register. This is a downward spiral of the most dangerous kind. As you become more numb, you naturally seek out even stronger stimuli to break through that deafness. You look for more controversial content, faster-paced videos, or more extreme entertainment just to feel the same level of engagement you once got from a simple sunset or a quiet walk. You are no longer living for pleasure. You are living to avoid the pain of the void. As Andrew Huberman often discusses, this process creates a massive shift in your dopamine baseline. When you constantly spike your dopamine through artificial means, your baseline, the level of motivation you feel when doing nothing, begins to drop. This explains the chronic fatigue and the fog that many of us live in. You aren't lazy. Your brain has simply recalibrated itself to a level where the effort of real life no longer seems worth the reward. This is the numbness mentioned in the transcript, a state where you are overstimulated but under-satisfied. You are drowning in information and entertainment, yet you are starving for a sense of real accomplishment. We must recognize that this is an invisible war on our potential. When your brain is in this state of high stimulation adaptation, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, long-term planning, and impulse control, begins to weaken. You become more reactive and less intentional. You find yourself reaching for your phone automatically, even when you don't want to, because your primitive brain is screaming for a hit to satisfy its reduced receptors. This isn't just a loss of focus, it is a loss of self. You are no longer the captain of your ship. You are a passenger on a vessel steered by algorithms designed to exploit your biological vulnerabilities. The recovery from this biological invasion requires a radical act, the acceptance of the lows. If you want your receptors to grow back, if you want to hear the soft music of life again, you must stop the noise. You must allow your dopamine levels to drop below the threshold of comfort. This is why the first few days of any digital detox or attempt at focus feels so agonizing. Your brain is screaming for the volume to be turned back up, but if you can stay in that quiet place, if you can tolerate the boredom and the slowness, your brain will eventually realize that the environment has changed. It will begin to resensitize itself. This resensitization is the true meaning of the dopamine fast. It is not about self-punishment or living like a monk. It is about biological restoration. Imagine the feeling of being able to sit down with a difficult book and actually feeling a sense of excitement as you turn each page. Imagine working on a career goal for 4 hours straight and feeling a deep, steady hum of satisfaction rather than a desperate need to check your phone every 5 minutes. That version of you still exists, but it is buried under layers of biological noise. We have been conditioned to believe that more is better, more connection, more speed, more variety. But in the realm of neurobiology, less is often the path to more. By intentionally restricting our access to cheap dopamine, we are actually expanding our capacity for deep happiness. We are moving from a life of wanting to a life of liking. This is the core of our philosophy at Everyday Better You. We take the hard road today so that the road tomorrow becomes beautiful. We must also confront the reality that the world around us is not going to change its tactics. The apps will get more addictive, the notifications more frequent, and the content more personalized. The invasion is ongoing. Therefore, your defense must be active and biological. You cannot rely on a fleeting moment of willpower to save you. You must understand the mechanics of your numbness so that when the urge to scroll hits, you can see it for what it is, a dying scream from an overstimulated system. You can choose to ignore that scream. You can choose to let the receptors rest. When you finally break through the numbness, you realize that the world is far more vibrant than any screen could ever portray. You begin to notice the nuances in conversations, the subtle changes in the seasons, and the profound joy that comes from simply existing without a digital tether. This is the freedom that the truth provides. It is a journey back to the natural self, a self that is capable of deep focus, immense patience, and true, unadulterated motivation. By becoming aware of this biological invasion, you have already taken the most difficult step toward reclaiming your mind. The healing has already begun. Section 3. Algorithms and behavioral manipulation systems. To understand why your focus feels so fragmented, we must look beyond your own biology and examine the digital architecture that surrounds you every waking hour. It is easy to blame ourselves for a lack of willpower, but we are often bringing a knife to a gunfight. As we strive to become 1% better every day, we must realize that our devices are not passive tools waiting for our command. They are, in the words of Tristan Harris, sophisticated behavioral manipulation systems. Harris, a former design ethicist at Google, has pulled back the curtain on an industry that treats your attention as a raw material to be mined, refined, and sold to the highest bidder. The engineering behind your favorite apps is not focused on your well-being, your peace of mind, or your personal growth. These platforms are built with a single, cold objective to keep you on the platform for as long as humanly possible. To achieve this, software engineers and data scientists have turned to the field of behavioral psychology, specifically the work of B.F. Skinner and his concept of variable rewards. Think of a slot machine in a casino. The reason it is so addictive is not that you win every time, but that you might win this time. This uncertainty, this variable ratio schedule, is exactly what is happening every time you pull down on a social media feed to refresh it. You don't know if the next post will be a photo of a loved one, a piece of shocking news, a hilarious meme, or a notification that someone liked your photo. It is this not knowing that causes dopamine to explode in your brain. As we discussed earlier, dopamine is about the anticipation of the reward, and nothing creates anticipation like a system that only rewards you occasionally and unpredictably. The industry has taken a slot machine and placed it in the pocket of billions of people, ensuring that the urge to check is never truly satisfied. This manipulation is deep and native to the design. Consider the infinite scroll, a feature that removed the natural stopping points of the internet. In the past, you would reach the end of a page and have to make a conscious decision to click next. That tiny microsecond gave your prefrontal cortex, your rational mind, a chance to ask, do I really want to keep doing this? By removing that barrier, algorithms have ensured that you stay in a state of flow that is actually a form of hypnotic trance. You find yourself at the bottom of a digital ocean, wondering how 45 minutes disappeared in what felt like 5. Your brain has been trained to favor the immediate, the fragmented, and the easy over anything that requires sustained effort. Furthermore, the algorithms that power these feeds are becoming more efficient every second. They are not just observing what you like, they are building a digital voodoo doll of your personality. They know exactly which triggers work on you. If you are prone to outrage, the system will feed you content that makes you angry. If you are feeling lonely, it will show you images that capitalize on that void. This is a race to the bottom of the brainstem, where the most primitive parts of your biology are being hijacked by the most advanced technology in human history. When you feel like you can't put the phone down, it's because the system knows your vulnerabilities better than you know yourself. This leads to a profound fragmentation of the human experience. When your attention is constantly being pulled in 1,000 different directions by notifications and suggested content, your ability to think deeply, what Cal Newport calls deep work, begins to wither. Your brain adapts to the environment of distraction. It starts to expect a new stimulus every few seconds. Consequently, when you try to sit down and perform a task that requires an hour of deep, focused thought, your brain rebels. It feels like an itch you can't scratch. You feel a physical pull toward your device, not because you have a message to send, but because your hijacked dopamine system is demanding its next unpredictable hit. The cost of this manipulation is not just lost productivity, it is a loss of agency. If you are not the one choosing what to think about, are you truly the one living your life? We are becoming a society of responders rather than creators. We respond to the email, we respond to the text, we respond to the notification, and we respond to the algorithm's suggestions. We are living in a reactive loop that prevents us from ever stepping back to ask if the path we are on is the one we actually want to tread. This is the ultimate biological invasion because it doesn't feel like an invasion, it feels like convenience. To fight back, we must first accept that we cannot win through sheer willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource that is easily exhausted by the thousands of micro decisions these apps force us to make. Instead, we must engage in digital architecture. If the apps are designed to manipulate us, we must design our environment to protect us. This means turning off all non-human notifications. This means removing the slot machines from our home screens. This means setting hard boundaries on when and where technology is allowed to enter our lives. At Everyday Better You, we believe that true freedom in 2026 is the ability to walk away from the screen and feel perfectly fine in the silence. It is the ability to ignore the trending topics and focus on the timeless ones. When you understand that the red dot on your app icon was designed by a team of people specifically to trigger your stress response and force an opening, that dot loses its power. Awareness is the first line of defense. Once you see the strings, it becomes much harder for the puppeteer to move you. We are not suggesting a return to the Stone Age. Technology is a tool, and it can be a magnificent one. But a tool is something you pick up to achieve a specific goal and then put back down when the job is done. If the tool is picking you up, it is no longer a tool, it is a master. Reclaiming your mind means returning the smartphone to its rightful place as a secondary object in your life. It means realizing that your attention is the most valuable thing you own, more valuable than money, more valuable than status, because it is the currency of your very existence. When you choose to disconnect from the algorithm, you are connecting with yourself. You are giving your dopamine receptors a chance to recover from the constant barrage of artificial spikes. You are giving your mind the space it needs to breathe, to wander, and to eventually find the soft music of real life again. The algorithms want you fast, reactive, and shallow. We want you slow, intentional, and deep. That is the only way to truly become better 1% at a time. Section 4, deep work, the rarest skill of the 21st century. As we navigate our path toward becoming everyday better you, we must confront a sobering reality. Our ability to focus is not just being challenged, it is being systematically dismantled. We live in an era where being busy is often confused with being productive, yet true value is almost never created in the frantic switching between emails, notifications, and tabs. As Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work, has argued, The capacity to focus deeply on a cognitively demanding task is becoming the rarest and, therefore, the most valuable skill of the 21st century. While the rest of the world is drowning in a sea of shallow distractions, the individual who can protect their attention becomes a superpower in their field. To understand why this skill is so rare, we must look at the biological cost of what we call multitasking. Many of us pride ourselves on our ability to juggle 5 things at once. But the human brain is not actually designed for multitasking. It is designed for rapid task switching. Every time you pull your attention away from a difficult project to check a quick notification, you pay what neuroscientists call an attention residue tax. A portion of your cognitive resources remain stuck on the previous task, meaning that when you return to your work, you are operating at a lower mental capacity. If you do this enough times throughout the hour, you never actually reach a state of peak performance. You are essentially working with a self-imposed brain fog that prevents you from reaching the depth required for true mastery. In our transcript, this is described as a biological invasion because it forces the brain to adapt to fragmentation. When you spend your entire day in a state of hyper-responsiveness, replying to every ping and clicking every link, you are training your brain to reject depth. You are teaching your neurons that sustained effort is unnecessary because a new, easy reward is always just seconds away. Over time, this training makes deep work feel physically uncomfortable, even painful. You sit down to write or code or think, and within 5 minutes, your brain begins to itch for distraction. This isn't because the work is too hard, it's because your focus muscles have atrophied from lack of use. We can see the power of depth in the lives of those who have shaped history. Take J.K. Rowling during the years she spent writing the Harry Potter series. She didn't have a perfect, high-tech office. She was a single mother living in poverty, writing in noisy cafes while her child slept. What she possessed was not an ideal environment, but an ironclad ability to remain within her imaginary world for long periods. Rowling once shared that she didn't just write when she felt inspired, she wrote to create the inspiration. This is the essence of deep work. It is the result of practicing in the face of silence and even boredom. Depth is not a gift that some people are born with. It is a discipline that is forged through the repeated choice to stay with a task even when it becomes difficult or dull. The current attention economy wants to convince you that you need to be constantly connected to stay relevant. But if you look at the most successful individuals, the true outliers, they almost always have a different relationship with technology. Warren Buffett, for instance, spends about 80% of his day reading and thinking. He doesn't have a ticker tape in his office. He doesn't have a computer on his desk. He stays away from the noise. He has realized that in a world where everyone is moving fast and thinking shallowly, the person who can sit still and think deeply has a massive competitive advantage. Success, in his view, doesn't come from doing more, it comes from doing less, but doing it with total unadulterated depth. So, how do we rebuild this muscle of focus as part of our 1% better everyday philosophy? It starts with acknowledging that boredom is not an emergency that needs to be fixed with a smartphone. In nature, boredom was the catalyst for exploration and creativity. When we quench that boredom instantly with cheap digital stimulation, we rob ourselves of the very impulse that leads to growth. We must learn to sit with the void. We must allow our brains to feel the discomfort of a slow-moving task without reaching for an escape. This is the only way to resensitize our dopamine systems and restore our natural capacity for attention. Deep work also requires us to design our deep work rituals. You cannot rely on a sudden burst of willpower to get focused in a world designed to distract you. Instead, you must build an environment where focus is the path of least resistance. This might mean leaving your phone in another room, using software that blocks certain websites, or setting specific deep work hours where you are completely unreachable. By reducing the friction of getting started and eliminating the friction of staying focused, you allow your brain to slide into that state of flow where the hours seem to disappear and the quality of your output skyrockets. We must also change our relationship with boredom during our downtime. If you spend every moment of waiting in line at the grocery store, sitting on the train, or waiting for a friend scrolling through your phone, you are effectively training your brain that it can never be without stimulation. When it then comes time to do deep work, your brain will struggle because it hasn't practiced being bored. To become a master of focus, you must practice focus even when you aren't working. Try walking without a podcast. Try eating without a screen. Try sitting on a park bench and simply observing the world. These small acts of attention training are the foundation upon which your professional and personal depth is built. The truth is that the world is moving toward a future where shallow tasks, the kind of work that can be done while distracted, will increasingly be handled by machines and AI. What will remain uniquely human and therefore uniquely valuable is the ability to synthesize complex information, to engage in creative problem solving, and to build deep, meaningful connections. None of these things can happen in a fragmented mind. None of them can happen if you are checking your phone every 6 minutes. Choosing deep work is an act of rebellion. It is a declaration that your mind is your own and that you refuse to let it be chopped into tiny pieces by the machinery of the attention economy. It is a commitment to quality over quantity and to meaning over metrics. As you take this path, you will find that you don't just become more productive, you become more alive. You begin to experience a sense of craftsmanship in your work and a sense of presence in your life that is simply impossible in a state of distraction. This is the true destination of our journey, a life lived with depth, purpose, and total clarity. Section 5, Invisible Addiction, Escaping Emotions, Shutterstock. On our journey with Everyday Better You, we have reached a pivotal moment where we must redefine what it means to be addicted. In the past, addiction had a very specific face. It was the alcoholic, the smoker, or the person trapped by chemical substances. But today, addiction has become silent, clean, and socially acceptable. It has become invisible. You still go to work, you still fulfill your family duties, and you still maintain a presence in society, but internally, your nervous system has become entirely dependent on a continuous stream of low-effort, high-frequency dopamine hits. As Dr. Gabor Mate, a leading expert on the psychology of addiction, has profoundly stated, addiction is not a problem of the substance itself, it is a problem of the person's attempt to escape from their own emotions. This invisible addiction does not destroy your life overnight. Instead, it erodes you from the inside out, piece by piece, until you no longer recognize the focused, patient, and deep version of yourself. The most dangerous aspect of this state is the massive blanket of denial that covers it. We don't say, I am addicted. We say, everyone else is doing it too. We normalize the act of checking our phones dozens of times per hour because we see it reflected in every person on the street, in every office, and at every dinner table. When a behavior that harms our long-term potential becomes the social norm, we lose our internal warning system. We stop seeing the shackles because everyone is wearing them. But we must ask, what are we running from? Why is the sound of our own thoughts so unbearable that we must drown them out with the first digital distraction we can find? The truth is that technology has provided us with the most efficient escape hatch in human history. A single tap is enough to avoid feeling the sting of a lonely evening, the weight of a difficult decision, or the creeping anxiety of an uncertain future. We use dopamine as a digital anesthetic. We aren't scrolling because we are interested in the content, we are scrolling because we are afraid of the void that appears the moment the screen goes dark. By constantly reaching for this external regulator, we weaken our internal capacity to process and regulate our own emotions. This is the hidden cost of the 21st century lifestyle. The atrophy of our emotional resilience. When you never allow yourself to feel bored, you never learn how to be creative. When you never allow yourself to feel lonely, you never learn the value of true solitude. When you never allow yourself to feel the friction of a difficult task, you never build the character required to achieve greatness. We are trading our depth for a series of likes, and we are trading our peace for a series of notifications. This trade is a losing one. Yet the algorithm makes it feel so easy and so natural that we rarely pause to calculate the debt we are accruing. Consider the story of Tim Ferriss, a man who has become synonymous with efficiency and productivity. In his early career, despite his massive success, Ferriss found himself trapped in a state of productivity addiction. He was obsessed with optimizing every second, consuming every bit of information, and staying constantly connected. He admitted that he had reached a point where he could no longer sit with his own thoughts. His addiction to doing had severed his connection to being. It was only through a deliberate process of radical reduction, removing stimuli, embracing slowness, and spending long periods away from technology that he was able to recover his internal balance. His achievements didn't save him from the invisible addiction, only his awareness and his willingness to face the slow parts of life did. At Everyday Better You, our philosophy of 1% better every day requires us to confront this emotional avoidant behavior. We must realize that the urge to check our phones is often a signal that an uncomfortable emotion is rising to the surface. Instead of instantly smothering that emotion with a fresh hit of dopamine, we must learn to stay with it. We must learn to let the anxiety, the boredom, or the loneliness exist without trying to fix it with a screen. It is in that space of non-reaction that true healing begins. It is there that the brain realizes it doesn't need an external device to feel okay. This invisible addiction also distorts our understanding of rest. We think we are relaxing when we spend 2 hours watching random videos or scrolling through feeds, but we are actually doing the opposite. We are consuming more stimulation, meaning the brain never gets the chance to downregulate and recover. This is why you can spend an entire day relaxing and still feel mentally exhausted by the evening. It is not physical fatigue, it is neurological exhaustion. Your dopamine is depleted, yet your receptors are still being hammered. True rest is not the consumption of entertainment, it is the absence of stimulation. The sign of invisible addiction is not how much you use your device, but how you feel when it is taken away. If you feel restless when your phone is in another room, if you feel empty when you aren't receiving notifications, or if you feel irritated when forced to work on a single task for an hour, these are the whispers of dependency. These signals are quiet, but they are clear. If we ignore them, the dependency will only deepen, pulling us further away from the version of ourselves that is capable of building a life of meaning. Recognizing that you are caught in this invisible web is not a reason for self-blame, it is a moment of awakening. Once you see the addiction for what it is, a mechanism of escape, you regain the power to choose a different path. You can choose to stay with the discomfort. You can choose to give your brain the time it needs to recalibrate. You can choose to rebuild your capacity for self-regulation and internal direction. True freedom in the modern age does not come from having more stimulation. It comes from no longer being controlled by it. As we move forward, let us remember that the journey of becoming better is not a loud, explosive transformation. It is a quiet, persistent rebellion against the easy, the fast, and the shallow. It is the choice to be present when everything else is trying to pull you away. By facing our emotions instead of escaping them, we lay the foundation for a life that is not just successful on the outside, but deeply fulfilled on the inside. This is how we take back our lives, one intentional moment at a time. Section 6, the thief of joy, large scale. Comparison social media did not invent the act of comparison, but it has amplified it to a scale that the human brain was never evolved to handle. Historically, your scope of comparison was limited to a few dozen people within your immediate community. You compared your harvest, your house, or your skills to those of your neighbors. But today, the digital world has expanded that scope to millions. Every time you open an app, you are bombarded with the highlight reels of people from across the globe, individuals who are presenting the most curated, filtered, and idealized versions of their lives. Your brain, however, does not always recognize the filter. It simply registers the perceived gap between their perfect moment and your messy reality. Dopamine plays a silent but pivotal role in this cycle of envy. When you see an image of someone else's success, a perfect body, or a framed moment of bliss, your brain triggers two simultaneous reactions: desire and deficit. You want what they have, but at the same time, you feel a sharp pang of lack because you do not have it yet. This combination is a psychological poison. Dopamine here does not provide a spark of joy. Instead, it highlights the distance between your current state and an unreachable fantasy. As the researcher and storyteller Brené Brown has famously noted, comparison is the thief of joy and the enemy of contentment. When we measure our worth by the stage of someone else's journey, we lose the ability to appreciate the progress we are making on our own. This constant exposure to idealized images restructures your reward system. Instead of feeling a sense of accomplishment for your own small wins, the 1% improvements that define our philosophy, your brain begins to dismiss them because they don't look like the explosive successes. You see, online, you learn that enough is a moving target that you can never quite hit. This keeps your dopamine system in a state of chronic agitation. Because you never feel like you have arrived, the system never gets to rest. You are pushed into a state of silent, exhausted competition where the stakes are your own happiness. We see the weight of this struggle even in the lives of those who have reached the very top of the social hierarchy. Consider the story of Selena Gomez, who for a long time was one of the most followed individuals on the planet. Despite her global fame and success, she spoke openly about how the constant comparison and the pressure of the digital spotlight led her to anxiety, depression, and a loss of connection with herself. Her experience teaches us that success does not protect you from the damage of the comparison loop. Only awareness and the courage to step away can do that. If someone with millions of followers can feel not enough, then the problem is clearly not the amount of success we have, but the yardstick we are using to measure it. At Everyday Better You, we believe that the only valid comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. When you allow external images to dictate your motivation, your drive shifts from being internal, rooted in your values and purpose, to being external, rooted in the fear of being left behind. External motivation is fragile and taxing. It requires you to constantly check where everyone else is before you can decide how to feel about yourself. This is a recipe for mental burnout. To reclaim your joy, you must reclaim your metrics. The danger of this comparison is often invisible. You might think that scrolling through a feed for 10 minutes is harmless entertainment, but it leaves behind a psychological residue that lasts long after you lock your phone. You carry that sense of deficit into your work, your relationships, and your self-reflection. Your brain continues to evaluate your life through the lens of those high-definition fantasies, making your real-world achievements feel small and insignificant. This is a distortion of reality that prevents you from living deeply in your own life. To break free from this thief of joy, we must change our digital consumption habits. This isn't necessarily about isolating yourself, but about being radically selective. If an account makes you feel less than, unfollow it. If a platform triggers your envy more than your inspiration, delete it. We must treat our mental environment with the same care we treat our physical one. You wouldn't invite a thief into your home to steal your possessions. Why would you invite an algorithm into your mind to steal your peace? When you reduce the noise of other people's lives, your brain begins to recover its ability to find satisfaction in the real world. Your dopamine system starts to associate reward with your own effort and your own progress again, rather than with the passive consumption of images. You begin to realize that your life, with all its slow parts and its challenges, is where the real meaning is found. You don't need to be better than millions of strangers, you just need to be the person you were meant to be. This shift toward internal validation is a profound turning point on the journey of becoming better. It allows you to build a foundation of mental stability that is not shaken by a single post or a trending topic. You become unfazed. You can see someone else's success and feel genuine happy for them without it casting a shadow over your own worth. This is the ultimate freedom, to be so grounded in your own progress that the world's noise no longer has the power to define you. As we move forward, remember that the 1% improvement we seek is not a race against others. It is a steady, quiet walk toward your own potential. In the silence of that walk, you will find a joy that the thief of comparison can never reach. You will find that you are enough, not because you have more than someone else, but because you are present and intentional in your own existence. This is the depth we strive for, not to be faster, but to be more solid. Section 7, Stolen Motivation. The effort first principle. The feeling of being unmotivated is rarely about a lack of desire. It is about a broken relationship with the concept of reward. To become 1% better every day, we have to understand the biological law that governs human achievement, the principle of effort first, reward later. This is the natural order of the human nervous system. For thousands of years, dopamine served as the bridge between a need and its fulfillment. If you were hungry, you had to track, hunt, and prepare food before you could experience the reward of eating. That gap between the desire and the result is where dopamine does its best work. It builds the tension, the focus, and the resilience needed to see a task through to the end. However, the modern world has effectively inverted this principle. We now live in an era of reward first, effort never. You can experience the thrill of social validation, the excitement of a high-speed chase in a video game, or the taste of a hyper-palatable meal without moving a single muscle other than your thumb. When rewards become this cheap and this fast, your brain begins to ask a very logical question. Why should I put in the effort for a long-term goal when I can get a hit of dopamine right now for free? Over time, your nervous system learns to reject anything that requires a delay in gratification. This is why the work that actually matters, building a career, learning a language, or nurturing a relationship, starts to feel impossibly heavy. Your brain has been trained to expect the prize before the race even starts. This is the essence of stolen motivation. It is not that you are lazy, it is that your brain is being flooded by junk dopamine that provides no nutritional value for your soul. As Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, famously noted, humans do not collapse because of suffering, but because of a lack of meaning. When your dopamine is disconnected from effort and meaning, your actions become hollow. You might be busy all day, checking off minor tasks and responding to messages, but at the end of it, you feel a profound sense of emptiness because you haven't actually built anything. You are running on a digital treadmill using a lot of energy, but staying exactly where you are. We can see the weight of this struggle in the story of Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in history. After reaching the absolute peak of his career and winning multiple gold medals, Phelps fell into a deep, dark depression. He shared that once the goals were gone, everything felt meaningless. Success, in all its glory, could not save him from a collapse in motivation once the pursuit ended. It was only when he reconnected with the process, the daily grind, and the internal meaning of his actions that he found a reason to keep moving. The lesson here is that motivation does not live in the medal or the result, it lives in the journey. If you lose the joy of the struggle, you lose the engine of your life. Reclaiming your stolen motivation requires a deliberate return to the natural order. At Everyday Better You, we call this dopamine realignment. It involves intentionally reintroducing friction into your life. You must begin to associate dopamine with the effort itself rather than just the outcome. This sounds counterintuitive in a world that sells easy and instant, but it is the only way to heal your drive. When you choose to go for a run when it's raining, or when you choose to sit with a difficult problem for an hour without checking your phone, you are teaching your brain that the nor-lurk effort is the source of the reward. This slowly raises your dopamine baseline and makes you more resilient to the cheap hits that used to distract you. The chronic fatigue many feel today is often a biological savings mode. When the brain no longer sees a clear link between nor-lurk effort and a meaningful reward, it stops allocating energy. It's a survival mechanism. Why waste calories on a hunt that yields no meat? Digital stimulation tricks the brain into thinking it is hunting all day, but because there is no real meat at the end, no tangible progress or skill gain, the system eventually burns out. You feel tired, not because you've worked too much, but because you've simulated work through high stimulation distractions without ever achieving the satisfaction of completion. To break this cycle, you must start small, 1% at a time. Reclaim your mornings. The moment you reach for your phone in bed, you have already signaled to your brain that rewards are free and effortless. You have set the tone for a day of reactivity. Instead, try to give your brain a gap of 30 minutes to an hour where you do something difficult or quiet. Exercise, write, or simply sit in the silence. By making the first hour of your day about nor-look, effort, and presence, you are telling your nervous system that you are the captain of your drive, not the algorithm. We must also be honest about the escapes we use. Every time you reach for a quick digital fix when work gets hard, you are reinforcing a quit signal in your brain. You are teaching yourself that you cannot handle discomfort. But if you can stay in that difficult moment for just 5 minutes longer than you want to, the tide begins to turn. That extra 5 minutes is where the growth happens. That is where your brain begins to release the dopamine that fuels persistence rather than distraction. Motivation is not something you find, it is something you release. It is already there, buried under layers of cheap stimulation and false rewards. By stripping away the junk dopamine, you allow your natural fire to burn again. You find that you do have the energy to pursue your dreams, to read that book, or to build that business. You just had to stop spending your fire on things that didn't matter. As we move forward, let us embrace the hard road. Let us celebrate the nor-lurk effort and the slow progress. True power doesn't come from a sudden burst of inspiration, but from the steady, quiet flame of a mind that knows how to wait and how to work. When you reclaim your motivation, you reclaim your future. You no longer wait for the world to move you, you move the world. This is the death we seek, a life where every action is fueled by purpose and every reward is earned with integrity. Section 8, Modern Discipline. The architecture of simplicity discipline is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in the pursuit of a better life. We often view it as a brutal war of the will, a contest where the strong conquer the weak through sheer force of character. But in a world overflowing with engineered stimuli, discipline is not a moral issue, it is an environmental and neurological one. You do not lack discipline, you are simply living in a context that makes discipline biologically unnatural. When your brain is surrounded by easy, high-speed rewards, resisting them isn't just a challenge of will, it is a constant drain on your finite mental resources. Traditional discipline was built on a foundation of scarcity. When rewards were rare, the effort required to reach them was naturally justified. Today, we live in an era of hyperabundance. Every notification you ignore and every temptation you bypass consumes a piece of your decision energy. If you rely solely on willpower to stay focused, you will inevitably fail once that energy is depleted by the end of the day. As James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, has noted, sustainable discipline comes from designing an environment where the right choice is the easiest choice. We see this architecture of discipline in the legendary career of Kobe Bryant. What made his work ethic extraordinary was not just his famous Mamba mentality, but the rigid, simple structure he built around his life. Kobe woke up early and followed a strict schedule that eliminated unnecessary decisions. He didn't wait for inspiration to strike before he went to the gym. He created a system where training was the default setting of his existence. As Kobe himself once said, he didn't believe in inspiration, he believed in habits. By reducing the friction between himself and his goals, he allowed his energy to be spent entirely on the work rather than on the struggle to start the work. Modern discipline also requires us to reconcile with boredom. When you engage in deep work or long-term pursuits, there are no immediate dopamine spikes. Your brain will naturally protest. It will create a sense of restlessness or anxiety to force you back toward familiar, high-intensity stimuli. If you mistake this feeling for a sign that you are untalented or unsuited for the task, you will quit. But if you understand that this is simply a temporary withdrawal from cheap dopamine, you can choose to stay in the seat long enough to break through to the other side. At Everyday Better You, we teach that discipline is the art of choosing less so that you can have more. It is about protecting your energy by removing unnecessary choices, apps, and distractions. Every commitment you decline and every notification you disable is a gift of energy back to your focused mind. This is why highly disciplined people often lead surprisingly simple lives. They aren't trying to be ascetic or boring. They are simply guarding their mental resources so they can go deeper into the things that truly matter. You cannot build a castle of focus on a foundation of digital sand. Rebuilding your brain is not about returning to the person you were before the digital age. It is about becoming a more mature, intentional version of yourself. It is about realizing that depth is a competitive advantage that accumulates over time. Look at the success of Warren Buffett. His advantage isn't that he has faster information, it's that he has more space to think. He spends his days reading and reflecting, avoiding the noise that consumes everyone else. He has mastered the rarest skill of all, the ability to sit still and wait for the right move. As you move forward, remember that the slow parts of life are where the magic happens. Deep friendships require conversations that aren't rushed. Deep thinking requires silence that isn't interrupted. Meaningful progress requires effort that isn't instantly rewarded. By choosing to live slowly and intentionally, you aren't falling behind the world. You are stepping out of a race that leads nowhere. You are reclaiming your right to be present, to be creative, and to be truly alive. This journey we have taken together is not just about knowing more, it is about seeing more. When you see the strings of the algorithm, they lose their pull. When you see the mechanics of your own dopamine, you regain your power. You are no longer a victim of a biological invasion. You are the architect of your own recovery. Every time you choose the hard path, every time you choose to stay focused, and every time you choose silence over noise, you are taking a 1% step toward freedom. Freedom in the modern age does not come from having more stimulation. It comes from no longer being a slave to it. It comes from the quiet, persistent rebellion of a person who knows their own worth is not measured in likes or speed, but in depth and integrity. If you have made it this far, believe that you have already changed. You have started to look at yourself with honesty and compassion. You are ready to build a life that is not just better on the outside, but deeply solid on the inside. This is the end of this specific discussion, but is the beginning of your real-world practice. The journey of becoming 1% better every day is a lifelong walk. It isn't loud and it isn't hurried, but it is the most rewarding path you will ever take. Stay intentional, stay deep, and most importantly, stay true to the quiet music of your natural self. Section 9, the path to absolute freedom. Reclaiming your sovereignty. The ultimate goal of understanding our neurobiology is not just to become more productive in a traditional sense, it is to reclaim our human sovereignty. In a world where algorithms are designed to anticipate our every move and exploit our every weakness, being able to act with true intention is the ultimate act of rebellion. We must realize that every time we choose to put down the phone and look at the world with our own eyes, we are winning a battle for our own souls. This freedom is not something that is given to us by technology or society. It is something we must build piece by piece through the architecture of our daily lives. As we have seen throughout this journey, the hard road is actually the only one that leads to genuine satisfaction. The easy road, the one paved with instant gratification, endless scrolls, and cheap dopamine actually leads to a state of chronic exhaustion and emptiness. When we choose the difficult path of focus, patience, and depth, we are not punishing ourselves. We are nourishing our nervous systems. We are allowing our dopamine receptors to recover their natural sensitivity so that the soft music of real life, a sunset, a deep conversation, the satisfaction of a job well done, can finally be heard again. This is the healing we spoke of earlier, the return to a state where we are no longer driven by a desperate wanting, but are capable of deep and sustained liking. To maintain this freedom, we must adopt a philosophy of radical intentionality. This means that we no longer accept the defaults of the modern world. We don't check our phones because a red dot appeared. We check them because we have a specific reason to do so. We don't consume content because it was suggested to us. We seek out information that aligns with our values and our growth. We become the curators of our own attention, recognizing that it is the most valuable resource we possess. As Naval Ravikant has suggested, true wealth is not having more, but needing less. When you no longer need constant external stimulation to feel okay, you have reached a level of power that no algorithm can touch. This journey towards sovereignty also requires us to redefine our relationship with success. In the dopamine-driven world, success is often measured by more followers, more views, more speed. But on the path of everyday better you, success is measured by depth, more focus, more presence, more meaning. We stop racing against the world and start walking toward our own potential. We realize that the 1% improvements we make in the silence of our own discipline are far more valuable than any explosive, shallow victory achieved in the spotlight. This shift in metrics is what allows us to stay consistent over the long term, long after the initial burst of inspiration has faded away. The truth is that the modern world will continue to get louder, faster, and more addictive. The biological invasion will only intensify as technology becomes more integrated into our lives. Therefore, our commitment to depth must be equally intense. We must be willing to be different. We must be willing to be the one who doesn't know the latest trending topic because we were too busy reading a book that has lasted for centuries. We must be willing to be the one who sits in silence while everyone else is plugged in. This slowness is not a sign of falling behind. It is the source of our competitive advantage and our mental stability. As we close this chapter, I want you to remember that the version of you that is capable of deep focus and immense joy is still there. It hasn't been erased by the screens. It has only been obscured. By choosing to live with awareness, by respecting your biology, and by designing an environment of simplicity, you are allowing that natural self to emerge. You are becoming a person who can sit still, a person who can wait, and a person who can work with a quiet, steady flame. This is the foundation of a life that is not just successful, but deeply, profoundly meaningful. The journey doesn't end here. It begins with the next choice you make when you put down this device. Will you reach for the next hit of dopamine, or will you choose the silence? Will you respond to the algorithm, or will you listen to your own soul? Remember, you don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to be 1% more intentional today than you were yesterday. That small, quiet, persistent effort is the only thing that has ever truly changed the world. Thank you for walking this path with Everyday Better You. You have the truth, you have the tools, and you have the power. Now, go out and live a life of depth. The world is waiting for the real you to show up.